Quite a shocking slide, isn't it? The university is dead. COVID-19 killed it. It's not just a bit shocking, it's a bit offensive, especially as over 2 million people have so far actually lost their lives in this terrible pandemic, and that's only going to get worse. I'll let that sit there for a moment. And yet, back in March, when we first entered lockdown, that's the message that we were getting in higher education. The university is dead. And as the saying goes, nature abhors a vacuum. There was a kind of gleeful rush into our sector by edtech, by software vendors, by people who have an agenda and want to tell us that you don't need universities anymore. You've got Google University. People can learn online. Research can be done remotely. Students don't want to come to campus. AI will run universities from now on. Well, I'm here to tell you, to misquote the famous American author Mark Twain, the death of the university is greatly exaggerated. Now, of course, there's always going to be folk who want to say, for their own reasons, that something like a university is dead. Unfortunately, this is not a new problem. Actually, this predates COVID. We've been fighting this in education for some time with the rise of populist governments around the world, from the UK, the USA, Brazil, India, Russia. There's an anti-knowledge movement. There are people who are saying we don't trust people who have intelligence, that have degrees. We don't need them. What we need is people to make money, and we need to do that quickly. Google University, for example. Short. You don't need to do a full degree. Just come in, do something quickly. Let me just disabuse you of that myth. Google University, not a university, right? I have nothing against Google. I use it every day, like I'm sure most of you. But Google is a company. It exists for one reason only, to make money. It's no more a university than Trump's failed bogus university was in its own right. So all of these rumors started going around when we entered lockdown. And a lot of us in education felt particularly nervous because we've been hearing this for some time. We've been getting this anti-university feeling. And we've been told by industry, by governments, that we're not producing the right kind of student. We need more people to make more money. University degrees are too esoteric. You live in your ivory towers. You're not doing what you need to do. Now, you might say I'd say this because I'm, as you've heard, an English literature graduate. I come from an art world. I'm a poet. What does he know of the real world? Well, actually, when I graduated, a long time ago, I graduated with a degree in English literature and language. And I then entered the workforce. I went into business. I was in business for 6 years, and I started on the shop floor in a retail. And I went in at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I unloaded lorries, and I filled shelves. And by the time I left and decided to go back to do my postgraduate studies at university, I worked for a board of directors at one of the UK's biggest retail companies, none of whom had a university degree, because it wasn't necessary then. So I have nothing against industry. But I entered university, like so many of us in this room and in the sector in which we work, because I have a passion for the purpose of what a university does. Those of you that have had the misfortune or pleasure or whatever you'd like to call it of hearing me speak or reading my articles before will know I have some real problems with words like job-ready graduates. The purpose of the university is at stake here. And guess what? We are not there to create job-ready graduates. The purpose of a university is to create graduates who are ready for life. I was lucky. When I went to university, I was able to pick the subject I wanted to study. I was surrounded by people doing every subject you can imagine. Now, that focus is getting narrower and narrower. There is a top-down emphasis, particularly from government and industry, that we should only teach STEM, science, technology, engineering, maths. And why? Because that'll make money. But the reality is that universities have been around for over 1,000 years. University of Oxford, University of Paris, Bologna in Italy, Salamanca in Spain. These universities have been around for so long because they're the cultural hearts of our society. It saddens me when I start the new academic year and a group of 18-year-olds sit in front of me and I'm giving them a welcome speech as a registrar at a university. And I ask them, why have you come? What are you looking forward to studying? And I hear a few of those 18-year-olds pipe up with, I want to be the next millionaire. I want to make a million dot-com industry. There's nothing wrong with that. But it saddens me because of the pressures that they're under, and that the pressures that their family and society put on them, that what their degree equals is money at the end of the day. Now, fortunately, there are a few of us in this university world who see a bigger picture. Just this week, for example, Warren Bebbington, the former Vice-Chancellor of the University of Adelaide, gave a very dire warning about why universities exist and what we're here for. And the reason I'm giving this talk tonight is very similar to what Warren said earlier in the week. Universities are being pushed from pillar to post. Industry wants this. Government wants that. We're being told that we must produce graduates to fill specialized technical roles. So even if you don't like my emotive approach, I've got a practical financial reason why that doesn't make sense. Graduates who now leave our universities won't have one job for life. As an example, I turned 50 recently. So far, I've had 3 different careers. I started in business, then I was an academic, and then I ran universities. Graduates leaving now also will be doing jobs that we don't even know about yet. They don't have names for them. They may not even exist. So the idea that we train students in very narrow, specialist technical roles doesn't make any financial sense. I argue, actually, that that is industry's role. That's part of lifelong learning. It's, after all, industry that make the money from these graduates later on. These technical skills are very short-lived. If we teach them to students now at 18, they'll be out of date in 2 or 3 years' time. And that's not what a university should be doing. Now, there's another reason why the university is dead should be shocking. And that's what students tell us ourselves. And I'm really glad to report this, because this comes from surveys in the US, in Canada, in the UAE, in the UK, and in Australia. Students themselves are telling us they want to get back on campus. You know, if a university degree was simply about letters on a piece of paper, then fine, just stay at home. Students can stay in their bedroom, in their pajamas, one eye on the iPad watching the lecturer, probably the other eye on their PlayStation. At the end of that, we'll give them a degree like a receipt. There you go. That's transactional education. That's not transformational education. That's not why most of us entered universities. The reality, of course, is that the campus and the university is so much more than the sum of its parts. Why do students want to come back? Why do those of us that work enjoy being on campus? Why did we enjoy being students? All of us that had that opportunity, the amazing opportunity to go to university ourselves. Because we met people, we engaged with people, we debated with people, we argued with people. We met people from different backgrounds, different races, different colors, different genders, different sexualities, different behaviors, different languages. We learned on campus about ourselves. We fell in and out of love with knowledge and with each other. And all of that was about the journey of life that university does. And that can't be done in a bedroom. And that's another argument why we must resist this very narrow focus on simply producing graduates in a mill, churning out more and more STEM subjects so that we can fulfill industry's needs. We've got to resist that. Think of all the amazing achievements in poetry, in music, in art, in the United Arab Emirates alone, and then take that wider around the world. If we only produce graduates in engineering and in specific areas of accountancy or business, where are our poets? Where are our musicians? Who is going to be on the stage of our theatres? Universities, of course, have played this role for centuries, and they'll continue to play this role as long as we make sure we fight for the purpose of the university and why it exists in the first place. A university is the hub of its community. You know, I remember when I came into higher education after leaving business 25 years ago, I can remember similar things, not quite as dramatic as that, but I was told, oh, the library's dead. Don't need libraries anymore. You know, we've got the internet. Don't need libraries. We've got, just click on a button. They couldn't be more wrong. If you look at the great universities now around the world, whatever country you go to, from China to Canada, you'll find a library at the very heart of every successful university. Sure, there may not be as many books. There's now a virtual library full of databases and journals, all online, all available, but there's still a library. Some of us, like me, in my dotage, still read books. But that's not the only thing libraries do. They're event centres, they're cafes, they're learning commons, they're IT spaces. They're the beating heart of a university. So don't listen to the doom mongers who will tell you the university is dead. I kind of started with this very upsetting, shocking message, and I want to end with a kind of clarion call. Because all of us who are involved in education, whether you work in the sector, whether you invest in the sector, whether you've been just a student yourself and you remember how beneficial that was to you, we have a fight on our hands. Those people who want to get rid of universities haven't gone away. Over this summer, I was very privileged to share a conference platform with Michael Ignatieff, the very famous philosopher, academic, and politician who is the rector of the Central European University. They were recently exiled from Budapest in Hungary and had to move the entire university to Vienna because of the Hungarian government's dislike of free speech on campus. That's very worrying. It should concern all of us. All of us involved in university should be worried that there is this movement to get rid of what we do, to shorten degrees, to tell students, you don't need to go to university to study French or history or classics or music. You just need to do this because it'll make that much money. That's not what I want our kids to go to university for, and that's not the message I want them to hear. So the fight now is to make sure that those of us in universities explain and convey and disseminate all the reasons why universities are so powerful. And we couldn't have a better one right now when it comes to COVID. The one thing that will get us out of where we are and the terrible tragedies that we're all facing will be vaccines. And where are vaccines developed? Not by big pharma, not by industry, by universities. My own university, Oxford, has its own vaccine. There are many others. Melbourne in Australia, Toronto in Canada, many of the great American universities. Universities like Khalifa here in the United Arab Emirates, all using their knowledge to help us achieve vaccines that will get us out of this. And why do they do it? They do it because that's where science leads us. It doesn't make money for them. It's about the purpose of a university. So having given you all of that and left you with this rather dramatic message, I don't want you to have nightmares. The university isn't dead. We're doing our TEDx talk here. Right now, I'm sure there are many other TEDx talks at similar universities around the world, even in the midst of this pandemic, proving why those of us who love and work in universities will continue to do so. But be on your guard. Don't fall asleep at the wheel. People will always come and try and find a way to stop free speech and progress from happening, for lots of reasons. I'm just very glad I'm in a room full of people who believe in what I believe and see the purpose of universities.